Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Jule Collins Smith Museum of Fine Art at Auburn University. My name is Chris Malinsky. I'm the Director of Education, Engagement, and Learning at the Jule. Before we begin our gallery talk today, we acknowledge the history and stewardship of the original homelands and territory of the Porch Band of Creek Indigenous peoples on which Auburn University is currently situated. It's important for us to always seek to understand our place in the world within that long-standing history. I'm delighted today to be joined by Aaron Levi Garvey, the Janet L. Nolan Director of Curatorial Affairs here at the museum, to talk about the first exhibition in our new series called Radical Naturalism. This exhibition, the first in the series, is by artist Coleman. It's titled A New Nature and My Problem with the Vessel, and it'll be on view at the museum through July 26th. As we'll talk about in a moment, this new series pairs our Audubon collection with work by contemporary artists. This exhibition brings together more than 24 new drawings and sculptures by Tommy Coleman, alongside 16 etchings by John James Audubon. Aaron, it's so exciting to talk with you about this new series.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about it. As Chris said, Radical Naturalism is a new series that we've started here at the museum as a riff off of Outside In, which was an ongoing series prior with the Natural History Museum. As a Research One university and museum, we strive to allow artists and researchers and scholars the opportunity to delve into a number of different collections that we have here. One of which being our John J. Audubon collection here at the museum, but also the 2 million plus objects that we have at the Natural History Museum. We bring artists here, they engage within our collection, they engage with that collection as well, and they draw parallels. Radical naturalists, such as Tommy Coleman, Manon Belay, Jim Draper. These are artists that are inspired by nature in a different way in which Audubon was. They're not just simply drawing biological or anatomical renderings or scientific drawings as Audubon had done. They're examining the different ideas that happen when they encounter nature. They're different inspiration, such as Tommy Coleman's Love Fence. So we look here, Love Fence examines potato vines and elephant ears and how they are an invasive species, or what we as humans understand as invasive, and what we understand as native. Native to the wetlands of Florida, but invasive in our yards where, our perfectly manicured and trimmed hedges are overtaken by these potato vines. Tommy has gone ahead and taken about 2 years casting these leaves individually from these potato vines as an examination within his sculptural and drawing process, but also his inspiration within nature as a whole. This looks at what is a boundary, what is a fence? Is it keeping something out? Is it keeping something in? And if we look here on the opposite side of the fence, we have the elephant ear, native to Florida, but also invasive into our yards. Look great as potted plants, but when it comes down to it, when they're in the ground, they grow like crazy, and they may not be in places that you want them in your yard, or at a barrier, or pushing over your wooden fence, or your metal fence, or your other potted plants. So as we go through the exhibition, we look at different types of work that Tommy has and what he's created, and these contemporary landscapes. Water lines, one of the biggest areas in Florida are the wetlands. He's from Jupiter Farms, he's from South Florida. He's lived in many parts of the country, but he always is going back to Florida as a whole. And he's looking at the landscape, he's looking at the wetlands, the St. Johns River, the Everglades, and these are his interpretations of landscapes. So again, traditional methodologies in creating these works, but non-traditional as in the presentation in that they are abstracted landscapes.
These are it's such an interesting series of drawings. What are we looking at? How are those produced?
So these works are created with colored pencil. They are created with watercolor, gouache, all traditional methods in drawing, painting, and whatnot. Very similar to Audubon. So as we walk through the galleries and we see the Audubon assemblages being part of his sculptural technique, Audubon was also painting, drawing, hand coloring these prints. These are lithographs, they're etching, they're using gouache and watercolor sometimes in the colorization of these pieces, but also the repetition. If you see here, this bluebird here is the same bluebird print down here. So the recycling of imagery, the repetition of imagery, though he was creating two different pieces, Audubon was creating two different pieces, but using the same plate. Tommy is doing something very similar where he's taking multiple Audubon works and creating these assemblages to allow visitors to take on a new view of Audubon's work. He's seeking to have these pieces flush out narratives and different stories. You know, most of Audubon's career and his work kind of looks away from him as a human and looks away from his actions as a whole. You know, the hunting and trapping, he himself was invasive in different spaces and in his time, and these allow us to put narrative form into these pieces.
So Aaron, when I'm looking at this new creation that Tommy's putting together, the Audubon images, it looks like some are upside down, some are sideways, and then there's this layered effect where they're blocking parts of the image. Could you talk a little bit about what's happening there? Why is Tommy displaying the Audubon work like that?
That's right. That's right. So if you look, there's a depth to them also. So they're overlapping. Obviously, Tommy can't cut up these pieces because they're in the museum's collection, right? So he's collaging these works in a way that is safe and dimensional as a whole. So you can see here the thread between these is this branch. So this is upside down while these hawks were perched on this branch and chasing the bluebird. This piece is completely upside down, but the way that Tommy has threaded it together as a whole, it looks like they're all occupying the same tree and the same branch. That's not dissimilar from the other collages that we have in this body of work as well, where they're seaming together a line of sight, you know, the horizon line, for instance, or another one where we're looking at a fox that's trapped and a vulture that's eating a buck. So looking at life, death, the narrative between the two, but also what's happening in our natural world where there are different species occupying the same spaces as a whole, while humans are also occupying those spaces.
That's great. Well, as we talk, if anybody is watching and you have questions, feel free to send those questions in. I will read out any questions as they come in to Aaron. So
we'll go back through here.
Yeah, let's go into the other gallery. While we head over there, I just wanted to ask, how much time did Tommy spend researching and producing this Audubon series in response to our Audubon collection?
So this body of work in New Nature is the product of about 15 years worth of work. He came to campus 3 times to begin his research within the Natural History Museum and within the Audubon collection over about an 8-month span. And within that span, he was creating these drawings together. He was creating these sculptures here. He was creating the assemblages, conceptualizing the assemblages as a whole. We have a pretty significant database that is front-end facing. And by front-end facing, I mean that everyone can access our entire collection online, and it's always being updated. So after his site visits to the museum, he went on to continue engaging within our database and looking at these pieces, creating assemblages, finding ties between them, and then sending us updates he and I were having conversations and saying, okay, these pieces work together, this piece doesn't. Should they be layered in this manner? Should they be layered in a different manner? How broadly should we kind of paint them with a brush, or how close together do they actually relate? Another underlying look into Tommy's work, and another concept within his work, is with these sound sculptures here. This is daylight, and behind me you see, or I'm sorry, daytime and nighttime. They're examining ignis fatuus, which is a moment at either dusk or dawn where there's combustions that happen from the degradation and degrading of organic materials, and there's just an off-gassing, if you will. There's a sound and there's a light that happens simultaneously. Tommy has created these condensation boxes to reflect those moments of both day and night, and you can hear the score in the background. The entire gallery is filled with this echoous score, which is a collaborative work with Austin Lefty Bay, a Baltimore-based musician that works closely with Tommy as well. These pieces are created with acrylic and epoxy resin, and they're, again, you can see inside the casting of these natural forms, these leaves, into these new sculptural components.
That's great. And we can hear in the background the sound. It's just kind of like faintly coming in online. If anybody has a chance to visit the gallery in person, the sound is really beautiful and really fills up the space. Aaron, could you talk a little bit? It looks, when you're looking at the cube, it looks like there's condensation. It looks like there's water and natural elements in there. And you're telling us that's all artificial. It's all
completely fabricated, that's right. So Tommy is a master of his craft and a master of different mediums, and not only in sculpture and drawing, but thinking about how to make a medium do something to look like it's natural. So if you're looking inside of this box, it looks like it's completely soaked. It looks like it's a greenhouse effect almost, right? That's actually epoxy resin that he's created to give that, or that he's mixed in a specific consistency and chemistry to make it look like water, and that it is a contained environment as a whole.
That's
so
great.
We'll start walking through the galleries a little bit further. A lot of the underlying concepts, again, are how we interact with nature, how artists interact with nature, how researchers, we as humans in general. I have to say, this is one of my favorite pieces that Tommy has created. This is my non-dominant hand as a dandelion. So it's cast latex and epoxy, human hair, and a dandelion. And this really demonstrates his impact on nature and his interaction within nature and how he is working within it. He's an avid gardener and plant enthusiast. As you can see, he's casting these leaves on a regular basis, constantly. And this is really, truly like a self-portrait almost, a la Robert Gober, where he's taking his hand, his non-dominant hand, so he's able to work with his other hand to create this cast. And if you look closely, his arm hairs in the same place that his arm hairs were on his hand at the time of making it, although they didn't get pulled out necessarily in the casting. But you can see this is very lifelike. This is very much his self-portrait, down to the Band-Aid when you get those nicks and cuts and scrapes when working in the yard, either cut with a shovel or a root that gives you a slice, or a thorn that slices your finger when you're pulling weeds. And you're pulling those weeds, why? Because they're invasive to you. They're invasive to what your ideas of the natural environment should be. And that's really the underlying tone of this exhibition, is what is invasive and what is native, right? Who gets to put that definition? And this exhibition draws into those questions and asks viewers to ask those same questions as well.
The hand is really terrific. And so the hand, for those of you who haven't visited in person, it's right there at the front entrance. So it's that first thing you see. It grabs you when you come in. And maybe everybody could see on the video that was playing those delicate, tiny little hairs that are all over the hand. I have to say, Aaron, it's also a little bit horrifying. It's a little bit gruesome to have this severed hand that's there. So could you talk a little bit about that tension of the kind of shock when you walk in and you see right in front of you this severed hand? What was Tommy's intention in kind of putting that dramatic shock there?
Sure. We really, as we were talking about this exhibition and the placement of specific works, the idea of putting this right at the entrance of the gallery is really to turn a mirror on ourselves and think about how are we interacting with our natural landscape? What is our carbon footprint? What are we doing to either hinder or help nature as a whole? What are our personal effects on this? And how can we look inward and outward simultaneously in how we maintain our garden? Or are we xeriscaping? Or do we have a garden ourselves? Or are we littering when we drive down the road? And I'm not making any accusatory statements, but that this is a mirror for us to really reflect on how we interact with the natural world as a whole. And are we the invasive ones, or are we native? How does that work? And what is that dichotomy between the two? So frankly, it should be jarring.
Great. All right, so we have a couple questions coming in,
Sure.
And if anybody wants to send in another question, feel free. So one question is, are these sculptures, is everything on view, is that part of the museum's permanent collection, or are these temporary just for this exhibition?
These are temporary just for the exhibition. We are a collecting institution. All of Tommy's works are on view and are temporary. All of the Audubon works are part of our collection. We have over 3,000 objects in our permanent collection.
Great. So the series really moving forward juxtaposes our permanent collection as represented with the Audubon objects alongside things that are just here for the temporary exhibition with the contemporary artists. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. And as part of that, our collecting initiative, one of the elements that we've approached this with is to build on that legacy of Audubon. So collecting through exhibiting, and hopefully one of these works will stay behind with the museum and further that collecting initiative.
That's exciting. That would be really, really great. So maybe since we just are looking at the two galleries, the two Audubon galleries today, there are a number of works that kind of spill out of that space. And maybe you could describe really quickly some of the sculpture, and specifically I'm thinking the seed bed that everyone will see when they enter the museum.
That's right. So Seedbed is an ongoing piece that Tommy has created. He milled a spruce tree. He chopped it down by himself like a lumberjack and milled it and created this bed from scratch, and then planted ryegrass as the bedding. And this is a participatory installation. Not all museums allow visitors to interact with the artworks on view in the museum beyond just simply looking at them. This work invites you to sit on it, lay on it, have a moment of reflection, and evoke memories of laying in the grass and staring at the clouds and daydreaming. And this faces viewers as soon as they walk into the galleries and allows everyone to climb all over it and enjoy being part of the sculpture and part of that exhibition.
That's great. Okay, so anybody can touch the bed when they come in?
Anyone can touch the bed. You can lay on it. If you want to take a nap, you're more than welcome.
All right, you heard him. Come to the museum, take a nap on the bed.
There you go.
So, Aaron, I'm wondering if maybe just in the last couple minutes that we're talking here, and just to give people a little bit of time, if there's another question anyone wants to ask.
Sure. Please.
Could you tell us a little bit about how you first encountered Tommy's work, and what really drew you initially to think of him as the first person that sparked this new series?
Yeah, so I first encountered Tommy's work, I want to say maybe it was 2015 or 2016 at Art on Paper during Armory Week. And I saw some of his drawings, and those drawings really spoke to me just as a illustrator and craftsman that he is, and seeing where his skill set was and understanding that he was also a sculptor as well, because those drawings were sculptural in nature. A lot of them were reflective of landscape and his upbringing in Florida, and I just kept tabs on his work. We did a number of studio visits. We've had exhibitions. We've collaborated on a number of exhibitions together. And I had been following specifically his elephant ear sculptures, which we have out in the lobby near Seedbed as well. And it just kind of clicked. It just made sense, having him be the start off, the jumping off point, the inaugural artist of the Radical Naturalism series.
That's great. And I think we saw Tommy in the footage just momentarily. Tommy was working on installing Love Fence there. You mentioned that Love Fence, we were talking before the stream, I'm not sure if you said to everybody, Love Fence was produced specifically for this exhibition, right?
That's right. That's right. So not only was Love Fence created for this exhibition, a number of the drawings were created for this exhibition, and both the day and night condensation cubes were created for this exhibition as well. So it's a mix of new and existing works from Tommy's studio.
Great.
So really giving the artists that come in a chance to expand their process, do specific works related to their research, and really have a platform to, spread their wings, as it were.
That's great. Well, I hope that everyone watching this video has a chance to come see the exhibition in person. It's really amazing. Aaron, before we finish, could you give us a little short description of what might be coming up in the series, the next couple projects that are percolating?
Sure, yeah. So, the idea behind this exhibition and this series is that we look at both the traditional and esoteric approaches to nature, documentation of nature, art making, and the next exhibition that we'll be hosting will be an olfactory installation. So it will be a scent in the galleries. There will be other things in the galleries as well, but it will evoke memory, and it will evoke specific places, if you will. So thinking in those realms, but then bringing it back to artists who are creating documentary and scientific renderings of orchids and plant species throughout the Southeast United States. That's
great. Smell sculptures.
Yes, smell sculptures.
It's going to be really exciting.
Right. Also participatory.
That's right. That's right. Well, thanks, Aaron, for talking with us about this exhibition. I wanted to let everybody know, be sure to tune in for Tiger Giving Day, which is coming up this Wednesday, to support the museum. And also, if you're interested in Tommy's work and would like to meet Tommy in person, he'll be here in Auburn, March 24th, for a public artist talk. Aaron and Tommy will be in conversation the evening of March 24th. So please join us for that. Thanks again, Aaron, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.